let's get into the main topic of the evening. We're going to talk about XXXTentacion and his untimely demise. So there was a lot of comments, a lot of opinions about his death. The reactions vast, from A to Z exponentially, and a lot of people had a lot of things to say about it. So before I get into all that, let's just kind of do a little preface as to what transpired. So earlier in the week, it was supposed to be a robbery attempt of XXXTentacion, and I believe it was two gunmen who assaulted him, and that eventually ended up leading into fatal gunshot wounds. So he was pronounced dead shortly thereafter. So when he was pronounced dead, everyone started talking about it. So all the media outlets, TMZ, Hip Hop DX, you name it basically. And everyone had their opinions on his death. Everyone, gave out their condolences and all that stuff. As of right now, they've apprehended one of the suspects. We'll see how that turns out, whether a trial date or not will be set, all that good stuff. Let's talk about, whether or not it's a setup. A lot of people are alluding to that it could be a setup, or people were just saying it's a robbery gone wrong, or a heist gone wrong, rather. It's up to interpretation at that point, but regardless if it was a setup or if it wasn't, it ended up with a casualty. And unfortunately, just for the sake of humanity, a life was lost at a young age. And I think that's the main thing to keep in perspective. But with that said, I think it's fair that we discuss this, dissect it, and expound upon it from all different angles, basically, because there's so much to divulge when it comes to the untimely death, the murder, in fact, of XXXTentacion. One thing that I want to say is this, and this is my personal opinion, basically, because I've seen everyone else's opinions on social media, and some people are on very opposite ends of the spectrum, some people are kind of in the middle. This is where I stand. So when it comes to the death of XXXTentacion, it's a shame that it happened, mainly because of the fact that he was a young individual. He was 20 years old. It's a shame that any 20-year-old, for that matter, had to lose their life at such a young age. And not because of health or anything like that, but because of the fact that someone else decided to play God. So that's where my remorse stands from. And also to any loved ones that you may have had that may have seen him in a different light, or that just knew him as a person behind XXXTentacion, they knew him as their son or brother, whatever. My heart goes out to them. I mean that genuinely. Now, with that said, I'm not gonna pretend like this guy was the patron saint, so to speak, or the upstanding citizen or anything of that sort. Because the fact of the matter is, this guy's track record, it's very spotty, to say the least. We gotta keep it 100. It wasn't too long ago that I was talking about XXXTentacion beating up on his pregnant girlfriend, and he had done it on a multitude of different occasions. And first and foremost, violence is something that I don't condone, whether it's a man towards a woman or a woman towards a man. I don't condone that all 110%. And it's not like this happened 6 or 7 years ago or anything like that. This has happened recently, and it's not the fact that it's happened recently, but it's happened on multiple occasions. Beating up on your spouse is one thing, but when you're beating up on your spouse who's also carrying your child, that's on a next level of savagery. I'm not even trying to, be clever with the puns or anything, but that is in all essence savagery. And then on top of that, he has a penchant for making certain threats towards other people on social media as well. Physical threats, come see me here, come see me there, I'm gonna mess you up, etc., all the tough guy talk. And at the end of the day, when you are breeding yourself into that type of negative energy, it's gonna come back to you tenfold. And this isn't me waving my finger saying I told you so or anything like that. I'm just outlaying the reality of the situation. If you are harnessing and cultivating that type of negative energy, it's going to manifest itself into something that you may not be ready for. So when I see guys like Tekashi 6ix9ine talking about, oh, I'm on your block right now, come do something, sure, you may have escaped for the night, but what's going to happen tomorrow, next week, next month, etc., etc.? And I it's hard for me to believe that XXXTentacion was prepared for that, or he was even cognizant of that. Mind you, I know, pardon me, that he was making like all these prolific death prophecies upon himself, akin to like a Tupac in a sense. Not saying that he is Tupac or comparing him to Tupac, but just making those assertions that he's gonna die tomorrow or next week, whatever. But again, this just kind of comes back to bringing all that negative energy to yourself. Like, it's all about manifestation at the end of the day. Once you manifest something and you speak it into existence, it's gonna happen. Like, if you constantly speak something to existence and you work towards it and you're aiming towards it, then chances are it's gonna happen. And I feel like the negative energy that he was cultivating, that he kept on encouraging, this is what led to his downfall, unfortunately. And it sucks that he lost his life at a young age, but at the same time, I'm not gonna pretend that he didn't have his own, idiosyncrasies to deal with. Like, this guy was a very, I don't know, like, I don't want to say troubled individual because I don't want to give sympathy to the way he lived his life. I really don't, because I can't give sympathy to somebody who has done so many wrong things. Not to say that they couldn't redeem themselves from it, because sure, there was an opportunity for that, but you gotta call it for what it is. Like, this guy did some pretty horrific things in his lifetime, like, especially within a short span of time right before his death. So I can't just say, oh man, he could have been this, he could have been that. I really can't say it because I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know if he was going to continue on to this trajectory for the next 10 years. And I know people are saying how he was on social media saying, oh, I want to do this, I want to be a better person. And sure, that's all good for the gram and everything, but until you actually put that into actions, then we won't really know for sure if you really meant what you were saying on those videos about talking about doing good and all that. We don't know that at the end of the day. Let's talk about, how people should feel about the scenario. It's entirely up to the individual at the end of the day. It's really up to the individual. Me personally, I'm kind of split in the sense where it sucks that a young man or a young individual, regardless if it's man or woman, lost their life at such a young age because somebody decided to play God. But at the same time, I can't scream out, woe is me. This guy could have been a doctor or a lawyer. He could have been a Nobel Peace Prize winner, etc., etc. I can't say that because, like, his track record and everything leading up until now says otherwise. And I just don't condone some of the actions that he partook in and all the rhetoric that he partook in as well before his untimely demise. But at the same time, there are also fans out there, like hardcore listeners of his music, who are just mourning for him. And, like, I can understand that because that may have been someone that you looked up to. I'm not going to question you on who, like, your idols are. Like, that's your prerogative. I'm not going to play judge, jury, and executioner on that. That's all you. That's your prerogative. But I think it's kind of split at the end of the day. Now, the interesting thing about this entire story is the comments that we've been seeing on social media, not just from fans, but from celebrities as well, and people within the hip-hop community. And one person who came under fire for their comments was Jidenna. And me personally, I'm a big fan of Jidenna. I've been rocking with his music since last year, to be honest. I kind of hopped on the wave late, but, like, I really like his music. And he's Nigerian as well, so go figure. But he kind of dropped the ball with what he said, and this is why it's dangerous to post a comment on Twitter, because there's not enough characters that you can fill into your tweet that can provide context. That's the dangerous part about Twitter. So if you're going to make a statement like that, if you don't have Facebook, then go in your phone, whether it's your iPhone or your Samsung, go into the Notes app. Everyone has a Notes app. Type out your full statement in full detail, and then do a screen caption of it, post it on the net, and then let all hell break loose if that's the case. At least you know at that moment that you have full context of whatever you want to say. But with Twitter, it's very dangerous. I don't have the exact quote as to what he said, but he basically said something along the lines of, imagine if we didn't see Malcolm Little turn into Malcolm X and how devastated we would be knowing that case. He says something like that, and that got people enraged. And I can exactly understand why people would be enraged by that. And the fact of the matter is this. You got to look at the bigger picture. You got to have common sense when you're making a statement like that. Let's say if Malcolm Little died as Malcolm Little, as a 20-year-old. Let's say he died when he was the pimp known as Detroit Red, pimping out women and selling drugs and all that stuff. If Detroit Red, Malcolm Detroit Red Little died at age 20, no one would care. No one would give a damn. There would be no Malcolm X legacy. No one would care at all. He would just be another statistic in the black community, especially during that time in whatever year that he was 20, because not back then black people didn't even have civil rights. And the fact that he was a drug dealer and a pimp, his death at that time, if he were murdered, it would have been justifiable because A, you're already black, so you have a strike against you, and B, you're the lowest of the low at that point in time. So not only are you black, you are 3/5 of a man at that time because there are no civil rights, and then 2 and 3, you're a drug dealer and you're also a womanizer all on the same feet. So no one would even give a damn about that person. We only care about Malcolm X because of the legacy that he left behind after he denounced his life of crime and womanizing and all that stuff. So I feel like when you're making a statement like that, you have to be very careful of how you word it because context is key. And you got to look at the bigger picture as well. You got to use your common sense. I get it. I get the fact that he's trying to say that had XXX lived longer, then he could have had the opportunity to change his life around. And if that's what he wanted to say, he should have just said that. But making the comparison to a prolific figure as Malcolm X, that's where he takes the L, unfortunately. And I understand why people, gave him the backlash for it, and rightfully so. Like, I can't defend that, so I gotta give Jadena the L. I won't give him the Wanks of the Week for that, but I'll give him the L for that, most definitely. So I think it's very important that people need to keep things in perspective in that regard. And then I was listening to the Brilliant Idiots, with Charlemagne the God and Andrew Schultz, and Charlemagne was basically saying how a lot of these people who are tweeting about XXX right now, where were they when he was doing all this dumb stuff? Why are you just tweeting about him now? Like, why are you trying to, do it for the gram and all that stuff? And I agree 100%. Like, where was all this talk from all the celebrities in particular about XXX, about trying to get him to change his life around rather than, he could have been one of the great ones, etc., etc. And again, we're in the social media era where we do everything for the gram, we do everything for the likes, the retweets, the reposts, and all that stuff. So I'm not surprised that, a lot of celebrities are speaking out on it right now. Again, I know they want to give out their condolences, but, you gotta be able to celebrate the roses while we can still smell them. So if they really felt this way about XXX, then why not give the man this praise while he's still alive? Or why not say, this guy's a good brother, but he's got to turn his life around. I think it's important that we can help him turn his life around. Where was all that talk, before the death? And I understand and agree with Charlemagne 100% when it comes to that, because now it just sounds like you're doing it for the gram. Me personally, I didn't say anything like rest in peace related, because at the end of the day, I was never a fan of XXXTentacion. I'm being very honest about that. Like, I've talked about him on the show before. I've criticized him heavily about his choices in life. I can't say anything about his music because I don't know him as a musician. I only know him through his antics, and that's another product of today's society that we're living in right now when it comes to our recording artists. They're more concerned about what they do on the gram, about the retweets and the reposts, rather than the music itself. I know this guy topped #1 in the charts. I think it's the hip-hop charts, most likely, but he probably topped the charts because of the hashtags around his name. And the same thing with Tekashi 6ix9ine. And what Tekashi in particular needs to understand, or any artist who's going down that path, is that people aren't going to want to mess with you anymore. Even just today, I saw a report that Tekashi 6ix9ine was denied entry into the UK. Imagine if he got paid for doing that. I don't know if he had a show lined up in the UK, but if he did, imagine the bank this guy could have made off of that show. Because chances are he was going to get paid in British pounds. And the British pound is double the value of the US dollar. So this guy missed out on a big payday all because of his antics and how they're kind of following him now. He couldn't even perform at Hot 97 Summer Jam in New York, and he's from New York. So what does that tell you? None of these labels or any of these, events and venues want to carry the risk that comes with someone like a Tekashi 6ix9ine. And that's what these artists need to understand. And that's what's led to the death of XXXTentacion. So hopefully, like Little Peep, like Triple X, let this be a lesson that like the dangerous life that you're living right now, it will come back to haunt you in one way or another. And in this case, unfortunately, it was death. But what do you guys think? Do you guys think that us as a whole should feel more remorse and compassion for the loss of XXXTentacion? You know, should we view this from an objective lens? What are your thoughts and your opinions on this story right now? Again, hit me up on social media at CoolRadioCC and share your thoughts.